Now that we've finished these 6 builds, I can tell you how much I'm gonna price each of them up for, and I know at those price points that I'm gonna be winning because I put them together for less than that. So we've got 380 at the back, 350, moving on here, 420, then move over here at 620, over here at 950, and then lastly at the back, 750. So in total, the profit is going to be, I would guesstimate, in the area. Welcome back to Tech Yes City, and over the last month, for some reason in the last month, you guys have been asking me quite a lot, whether it be through DMs or comments, about how much I sell my builds for and what goes through my thought process when I'm going to sell those builds. So today we're going to actually make a 2-part series because it's important to break away the objective from the subjective. So part 1 is going to be all the objective side of it, which really is akin to some of the things you see on camera, as well as some of the things you don't see on camera too. And then part 2, I'll be going over all the personal stuff and my own finishing touches when it comes to selling PCs like this. Now in the last day, I've put together 6 of these builds, and they really, when it comes down to it, all relate to different price points. And that's something we're gonna go into straight away with the objective side of things. So the first thing, and one of the most important things in marketing, is the willingness to pay. And that is a buyer's willingness to pay a certain amount of money for a product. And this relates to pretty much every single product sold on every single shelf all around the world, and not just in relation to tech, but also in relation to things like cars, homes. And let's break down an example with a car first. We've got, for instance, 100% of people are willing to pay $0 for a car. Then we move up and we might have, say, 50% of people are willing to pay $10,000 for a car. But you'll start to see, as we go higher in price, that amount of people that are willing to pay for that particular product start to diminish. And so with that, what you're going to see is, or you should see, is an abundance of ads in relation to those price points. So now, relating this to a gaming PC, we can say that, for instance, 80% of the market is willing to pay $300 for a gaming PC. When we step it up to, say, $600, we may have a drop off of now 30%. So 50% of our total market out there looking for a gaming PC aren't willing to pay any more than $600. We step that up to $1,000, we now only have maybe 30% of the people in the market for a gaming PC willing to pay that money. So for me now, I can jump on Gumtree and Facebook, the places, well, the 2 most popular places where these gaming PCs are listed, and I can then look for cracks in the market. And so this is me now using the objective knowledge that I've learned and relating it to the actual local markets and testing things out. And so now when I went through the intro, you'll notice that I built up quite a few low-end PCs because that was me scanning the market and seeing that there wasn't a whole lot of low-end PCs in relation to, say, the 506 price points on gaming PCs. However, we can then use this in the inverse scenario. And that is, for instance, if we look at the high end and there's absolutely nothing for sale, there is still going to be a demand, whether it be, say, for instance, there's only 3% of the population looking to pay $3,000 for a gaming PC or more. That population and market is still there. And if there's not any single ads available, then making one available is always a good thing to do. Though coming back down to this willingness to pay, this is where things start to get even trickier, because at this $300 price point, we now have different types of people who are willing to pay for different types of specs. So we may have, say for instance, 80% that we said before, they may be willing to pay $300 for a gaming PC with, say, an i7 and a GTX 750 Ti. But they might not be willing to pay $300, for instance, for, say, an FX 4300 and a GTX 650 Ti boost. So just because the gaming PC is at $300, it doesn't mean everyone's willing to pay $300 for that particular price point. They're willing to pay for, I would say, more so, a particular type of spec within that price point. So relating this to my example here, we've got a PC with a Z270 motherboard. It's a G4560, GTX 750 Ti, 120GB SSD, 1TB hard drive. Someone might be willing to pay $400 for this, and I'm selling it for $350. And now they're gonna see that and they're gonna jump on it. And they're gonna be like, wow, I was prepared to pay $50 more. So their buyer surplus is now $50. And if they get home and they enjoy it, it runs their game smoothly, they're gonna be over the moon because they, in their minds, got a bargain for this PC. Even though I'm still making profit on it, if you consistently give your buyers a buyer surplus, that's when you're gonna get good feedback and you're gonna get a good repertoire out there in the community where they're gonna then tell their friends, hey, go check out this guy, he offers better value than the competitors. And now I get asked this a lot in the Discord. People say, okay, how much should I sell this PC for? Am I selling it too cheap, etc., etc.? And the answer is, if you're making a comfortable profit off your build, say for instance, you're making $100 off a PC that you're selling for $400, having regrets about, oh, I maybe should have charged $50 more, you shouldn't really be having any of those regrets because you're offering a better buyer surplus. If you can keep getting the deals that you're getting, or you can keep producing PCs, that's going to be one happy customer that then is going to pass on that feedback to a friend and help grow your sales in the long term. Though reverting this now back to willingness to pay and also the buyer thresholds, these are two things that go hand in hand. There is ways that you will see over time with marketing and especially with buyer thresholds that sellers use to essentially trick customers into thinking that things are cheaper than they otherwise are. Say for instance, the good old PC for $199. That person may be willing to pay $190 for a PC or $150, and suddenly that $199 now gets their attention because it's in the same ballpark as what they were thinking. If we had, for instance, $200 on that PC, it may be, okay, straight away, that's out of my reach because of that first two in that price tag. And now graphics card manufacturers, CPU manufacturers, they do this all the time. There's always gonna be a 99 on the end instead of a $300, for example. So you're gonna see a graphics card coming out, it's gonna be $299 instead of $300. And that's going to be a strategic thing to try and suck in all those people that had a buyer threshold in the $200 field and didn't want to step it up to $300. So now with all this theory out of the way and all these willingness to pay for particular specs in particular price points, you guys may be wondering, what specs should I be buying at what price points? Should I be getting an i7 or an i5, or what's the best GPU to get right now for flipping PCs? And this is where that willingness to pay on a PC itself relates exactly to the parts that we're putting in, because we cannot assume that the majority of consumers are stupid. We have to assume the opposite. And that is when a consumer is looking for a PC at that particular price point, they're then going to break down that spec list and go check out those individual specs and see how much they cost individually. And so here's where we look at market prices. For instance, an i7 2600 might be going for $50 US, or it might be going for 70 AUD. Now, if I can go get that i7 2600 for 40 Aussie dollars, for example, I've then got a deal compared to the market rate. And when I go to put that in a PC for the final flip, I've then made more perceived value because I got that deal to begin with initially. And this is where it all relates back. When you watch my parts hunts every month, or my mid-month hustles, or whatever I'm doing, if I'm overseas getting parts, I always stick to the discipline of get a good deal. And so I've got a price threshold that I'm willing to pay personally. It applies to me 100% too, in that I'm doing the same thing when I'm going out and buying PC parts. Though to quickly interlude and give you guys a personal tip, that would be to go buy the cheapest i7s you could find, or of course go out and buy a cheap second, third or fourth gen OEM system, something like a Lenovo, Acer, Dell, HP, and then go get a cheap graphics card like an RX 470 or RX 570, put together that gaming PC with a decent case and a bit of bling, and then you got yourself a decent profit margin. Though moving on to the next important thing when it comes to a gaming PC, we have to look at the most important components in a gaming PC itself. And that would by far be the two most important components would be the GPU and the CPU. I would argue that the GPU is slightly more important than the CPU in that I've seen really old CPUs actually sell really well with systems because they've got a good graphics card. But I haven't seen the opposite in that you can have a really nice CPU and say for instance a GT 1030 and that system will still sell pretty well. It generally won't. So looking at what I've experienced and coupling that with the fact that I think the GPU is the most important component, you should therefore be spending the most amount of money when it comes to putting these systems together on the graphics card. So now we've identified the most important part for a gaming PC, and in this video and even in the next part of this video, we're not going to go into the editing, for instance, workstation PCs, because the market for them are nowhere near as big, and I generally don't delve into that, so I don't have really any experience. But I'd argue on that side of things, the CPU, the memory, and the SSD would be more important as opposed to this side on the gaming PC. The graphics card is the most important thing. However, graphics cards aside, we've got the price points of those GPUs and what they're sold at, which will dictate where our gaming PC prices should be sold at as well. For instance, in Australia, we can get an RX 570 brand new off the shelves for 169 Aussie dollars. If we look at an AliExpress price for that same GPU, we can get this for under 100 Aussie dollars. So if we go buy that GPU, we're technically, and putting it in a gaming PC, we're then creating about $70 of perceived value, assuming that the person buying it doesn't care a whole lot whether this part is used versus new. And of course, there are going to be consumers that really do care. And of course, those consumers aren't going to be even in the market for a used gaming PC on Facebook or Gumtree. Though with this price point of this RX 570 at 169 Aussie dollars, we can then say, okay, the maximum threshold for a gaming PC with these components is going to be, say, 700 Aussie dollars. Any more, people want a higher end graphics card, whether it be a GTX 1060, or they're going to want to go for an RX 580 or an RX 590. So we've got a maximum threshold that's related to the actual cost of the GPU core component, because that is the most important spec. So do keep that in mind. When you're going to be selling a PC, always make sure that your graphics card is matching the price point of those PCs and how much they're sold for. And you're probably going to turn around and say, well, how do I know how much to sell that for with that particular GPU? Well, that's of course a great question, and I'm glad you asked it, because here's where we can go on our local competitive marketplace and check out the going rate. And if we can't get any prices that are accurate from there, we can then go onto eBay in our country and go check on completed listings and see what gaming PCs have sold with those particular graphics cards. So there are some hints for you guys about how you can establish different price points in different PCs for different specs. Always check out what the going rate is, especially if it's a completed listing on eBay, because that again has tapped into what someone was willing to pay for those components. And now it's time to talk about the last component that applies to deal hunting and getting everything involved in making the final PC sale possible, and that is market efficiency. And so any market that's really efficient will basically over time make the opportunities for arbitrage become less and less. And what would be considered arbitrage in deal hunting would of course be picking up an extraordinarily good deal compared to the going rate of that price. Now, when I picked up my RX 570s, and I picked up a lot of them for 60 Aussie dollars a pop, and there was even RX 580s thrown in there, that was a really good deal. According to market efficiency, that shouldn't really happen a whole lot. And to be fair, I was really quick to jump on that deal. That was within, I think it was an hour of listing, I jumped on that. And it just so happened to be that the person had a lot more than what they were offering initially in the listing. And so I went and cleaned that up. And here's the most important thing about market efficiency. Really, when it comes down to it, it relates back to supply and demand. And if we look at the market of used PC parts, 3 years ago when I came back from Japan, there was so many good deals. I could just go out on Gumtree on any day of the week and find a decent price on a GPU or a OEM system, for example. But fast forward 3 years later, we've got a lot more players in the field. At the start of 2020, this market is pretty much saturated in that the demand for these used parts has increased substantially, but we've got to assume, since the population of the Gold Coast where I'm at, the population of Brisbane, that's the city up north, that's remained constant. Therefore, supply is going to remain constant. So the market has become more efficient over time in that we're seeing these valuations on PC prices. The moment they're under a certain price, someone's going to snap that up a lot quicker, because there's those other players in the game that are constantly looking for PC parts every day of the week. And now there's two things that can come out of this. And basically, if deals in your area have started drying up, that basically is an indicator that markets have become more efficient. It's not really anything to worry about, except the fact that you're not going to be getting as many deals as you used to get. Though on top of that, it still doesn't eliminate the fact that you can still get good deals. You just have to be more on the ball. And the good thing is, with more components coming out like Ryzen CPUs, other CPUs from Intel, like the 9400 and stuff like that, those CPUs coming out with lower price points has brought down the prices of used parts in that there's now a bigger pool of deals to be had. Though the same goes for GPUs, though we will talk about that more in depth in part 2 because there is a lot more than meets the eye in relation to this field. And now, relating all that information back now to the conclusion of today's video. How much should you price the PC for? That is basically all related to how much you're paying for the deals to begin with. And of course, it's related to what PCs are selling out there on the market. Remember, the important lessons of today's videos is the willingness to pay. How much are people willing to pay for that particular spec of PC? If you find that out and you're able to pick up those deals cheap enough, then you can get yourself some decent profits. And so now the 6 PCs I put here on the table are all related in terms of their price point to the graphics card being used, as well as the fact that I got really good deals on SSDs and 1TB hard drives, which in itself does add value to the flip. Remember, anytime you're putting in a higher spec component compared to the competitors, you are adding value at that particular price point. Another thing on top of all of that, if you guys watch my deals hunts, you'll see there's actually a lot more than meets the eye. Yes, I pretend to be Kurt the Bogan, and yes, I am a bit blasé when I talk to people like Les, but really when it comes down to it, I stick to a strict discipline on what parts I'm buying. But you may also notice when I'm buying PC parts, I'm in the market for practically everything. I'm not looking at one particular price point or one particular part. I'm always looking at different price points and different deals, because over time, if I'm collectively getting good deals on all different price ranges, then I'm going to be collectively making more money. And so here's where it gets down to the final point of how much should you charge for a build. And the simple answer to that is do your own research. I can't stress this enough. I do my research in my local market here on the Gold Coast, which does service other parts around it because people are willing to drive an hour plus to pick up a gaming PC. However, what's going on in even Sydney and the likes of Melbourne or Adelaide, for example, I don't have any idea because I'm not really servicing those markets. So wherever you are in the world, research your market, know what the going rate for the PCs are, and then you'll be able to make a bit of profit considering you get the good deals to begin with. Though with that aside, if you guys are wondering how much I'm charging for these 6 builds I recently put together and what components are inside, I'm going to be going way more in depth into that in part 2 because there's a lot more than meets the eye. That's the basic theory in part 1 here today, but when it comes to enthusiast PC gaming desktops, there is more to know than meets the eye. For instance, we've got the i7 phenomena, we've got the NVIDIA phenomena. These are things that exist when you're trying to sell a PC, and you've got to know how to account for those things. So in part 2, we're going to go a lot more down subjective avenue. But with that aside, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video of the objective nature of PC hustling. If you did, then be sure to hit that like button. Also, if you've got any questions or comments or any theories or anything that you think I missed out on, be sure to drop a comment in the comments section below because I love reading those thoughts and opinions as always. And speaking of thoughts and opinions, we've got Zoopaf Sweg, exclamation mark. And they say, hey, what's doing tech? Yes, I'm in Brisbane and I've got $250, $300 max. What's the main cards or CPUs or PC gear I should be trying to aim for to flip? So this came in the last 7 hours. And basically it depends if you're looking to get the whole build done for 300 bucks. If so, you're definitely best off trying to go for like an OEM, a case, power supply, and an RX 570, then maybe trying to flip that for 450 or something like that. That would be your best bet. But if you're going for like a single GPU around that price point, definitely look for like a GTX 1070. It's got the 8 gigabytes of VRAM, definitely a good selling point, and we will be talking about more of those things in part 2. So make sure you stay tuned, guys. I'll put the link for that video when it's ready up here, and I'll catch you in the next one. This one has been I guess, a different look into the whole thought process. There is more than just going on and looking for a deal. There's so many factors that are at play, and you got to learn those over time and realize that this is just the way it works. So if anything, try to identify trends as well. This is an important thing. Try to identify trends before they happen. So if you look back in some of my videos, I think it was in 2018, I said that there was going to be a bust when it came to the GPU mining. I knew that was going to come, and of course there were so many good deals to be had on GPUs when that bust did come along. So always try to identify those trends. If they're strong and you know they're going to happen, then jump on them before everyone else, because that is going to be your arbitrage before the market efficiency catches up. Anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Peace out for now. Bye. I guess that wasn't such an efficient outro. That means there's room for other YouTubers to come along, take my spot.